everyone. Welcome to Making Better Bites. It's your host, women's hormone dietitian, Adrienne, and I'm really excited to be back for another episode of Making Better Bites with you today. So before we get started, I actually have to tell you guys something, and I'm really frustrated about it, which maybe this is annoying that I keep sharing, but I have to just get it off my chest. So this is actually my second time recording this episode. So if you notice that it is coming up later than usual, if you're a typical listen when it first comes out, like Tuesday, tuning into the podcast episodes, it is the afternoon when this is coming out, maybe even evening time, but hopefully not. But it is the second time I'm recording this because, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, or I've talked about, that I have developed a little studio for myself so that I can do video versions of the episodes now, which I really enjoy. And I think it's really fun to have the content to be able to share on social platforms as well. But I've been having technical difficulties ever since my last episode. So if you listened to the lovely interview, the PCOS interview, you heard all about my technical difficulties. But I have this podcasting studio, and my parents were so gracious that they have extra closet space in their house, which is where I'm at right now, that they let me turn into my studio. So I had asked them for permission. Technically, they consider this like my room, but I've never I lived in here for a little bit when my husband had to go work in a different state. For a few months when we were married, we lived here off and on for that period of time, between houses. But technically I never really lived in this house growing up or anything like that. So they've only lived here a little bit of time. Anyways, it's my room. It's a Snoopy room now with bunk beds. So it's really not my room. But that really doesn't matter to you guys. But anyways, for some reason, I've been having technical difficulties holding a internet connection. And so I record this using an internet browser for the video version, and it kept dropping me. So that happened with my interview, and it happened again yesterday when I was recording this episode originally. So I'm really sorry. I'm hoping that this is actually going to make the episode even better, and I'm going to remember to say even more than what I remembered to say yesterday when I initially recorded it. But trying to recreate a conversation a second time, it's never going to be the same. So I'm just hoping for the best, and I hope that you guys still enjoy it. Obviously, you don't know the original, but I felt like I was having a lot of fun, and I'm hopeful I can translate that and remember to get all of the information the same. But I just needed to give that disclaimer because it's really bothering me that I'm going to be trying to say this all for the second time. But yeah, anyways, so that's going on. I apologize for the delay on the upload. And I apologize that this is my second time recording it. Hopefully it never happens again. I did update my computer, so maybe I need to stop being annoyed at my parents' Wi-Fi. Maybe that was not even the issue. I thought it was, but because this happens to me literally nowhere else. But they are so gracious to let me have all this stuff here so that I can leave it set up, and so that my studio space can be the same every time, and that the audio quality is pretty good, even though it's not soundproof in here. So yeah, I need to stop being sad about it, and I'm going to move on now, but we're hoping for the best. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and start kind of talking about today's topic. And the first thing I want to say about today's topic is that came up because I was talking about lowering your estrogen and talking about estrogen levels and nutrients or foods that are good to help with that. And I had a video on my TikTok basically talking about that, and someone had commented oh my gosh, why are we lowering our estrogen? Is it bad? No, estrogen is not bad. So I want to say that before we get into today's episode. Estrogen, it doesn't mean it's bad if you need to lower it, but a lot of women who suffer from menstrual cycle abnormalities or have difficulties in their life surrounding their cycle, it is as a result of their estrogen being too high. There also there's indications that higher levels of estrogen can also play a role in certain types of cancer as well, being breast cancer and ovarian cancer, I know for sure. And so we just want to be careful about maintaining healthy levels, of course. So when I'm talking about lowering it, if your levels are normal, then this isn't something that you need to stress about. We don't want low estrogen either. Estrogen is a good, important hormone for our bodies, and it's not bad per se, but you don't want to have too much of it. So that's the first thing, that estrogen's not necessarily bad. The second part of it is that we need more research in women's health. There's a significant lack of information about the menstrual cycle, like when it comes to women's health and how the menstrual cycle plays a role in um, different phases of your cycle affecting your health in different ways, or different reactions and things going on, and how that can play a role into disease development, but also like just like your average blood work. Because I was looking into estrogen, obviously, for this and for my newsletter, and that it was talking about how even throughout your cycle, your cholesterol levels can be different. So being aware of what point in a cycle that a woman is in when you are measuring for their total cholesterol and their cholesterol numbers, because it can have an influence on it. So we'll get into the details of maybe why that is correlated later in the episode, but just things like that they don't realize, and then now the research is just now coming out. Also, oftentimes the groupings for women are very, very small when it comes to research on females, and it's just really important that we pay attention to women's health. For so long, research has only been done on males, and our bodies are not the same, of course. So obviously, I've talked before about like a man's cycle is pretty much 24 hours. Like the way that their hormones fluctuate, they have higher energy in the day, and then it tapers off, or the first part of the day when they wake up, and then it tapers off at the end of the day, and it just recycles then again to the next morning. Whereas for a woman, we have our quote unquote 28-day cycle, which is different for everybody. But that standard cycle where you are resetting basically at the end of your cycle. And so there are ebbs and flows to our energy levels and to our hormones and like all of those sort of things going on. So we need to be treated differently in that way, and our approach to science needs to be different. So something really great, though, if you listened to my interview with Catherine about endocrine disruptors, she is a neuroscientist, and her past experience with schooling and getting her degree, her PhD, is in women's health and specifically with endocrine disruptors. But now she works, I think she said it was like in research and funding, and specifically promotion of women's research and research for women's health, that she really encourages a lot and tries to give a lot of support to. And that's kind of her job now. So both vital things and really important. And I'm really glad that there's people out there doing that kind of work, because it's definitely necessary. So like I said, I was kind of inspired to go into a conversation about fiber, because I have what I call my Better Bites Bulletin, and it's just a weekly newsletter that I send out every Sunday, like in the morning time. It goes out once a week, and I just take like one nutrient that I focus on, and then I give a breakdown of like what that nutrient does for your body, specifically for your hormone health, why it's important, good sources that you can find the nutrient in, and then also like kind of a way to use one of those food sources, whether it's a cooking technique, a recipe video, like those kind of things. And if that's something that intrigues you, you should definitely click the link. I will put it in the description box of this episode, whether you're on YouTube or this is audio only for you. I will put that there if you want to add your email. But this past Sunday, I did my bulletin about fiber. And there was a lot of really interesting information that came up for me, and like learning new things and having a better understanding. And that's what I really love about being a dietitian and being in the place that I'm at. And just something about myself is I enjoy going through the research and having new questions and learning new approaches, or taking in like other people's perspective on nutrition and why they believe what they believe, and kind of the background with what they're saying, and then looking into like, well, what's our current research looking like, and where is science going with this, and what is recommended, and what nutrients are important, and just so many things to learn. And I just love learning about them and staying up to date and taking in the information, and just taking time to sit down and read through all of this stuff is so interesting to me. And I'll read one article, and then it'll spark a thought in my mind about another question I might have, and I'll jump onto that and start looking through that. Or look at the related articles or research that the one that I'm reading maybe was referencing, things like that. So I just really love that kind of thing. And so I was doing that with fiber, of course. I'm like, wow, there's so much here to unpack about fiber, obviously with estrogen, but hormones in general, and how important fiber is to our health and our daily lives. And so I thought it would make a great podcast episode. And so, yeah, that's kind of why we're going to be talking about it today. Because I know I have different audiences everywhere, and every time you share the information in a different way, it helps people to understand better and to learn, and it helps kind of solidify it for me as well. So I really enjoy all of the different platforms and ways I'm able to connect and share information. And hopefully this will be beneficial to you as well. So, yeah, one last disclaimer, sorry, I forgot, is my health disclaimer that this is not intended to be medical advice for anyone. So please don't take it as such. Always work with your trusted healthcare providers that are going to know your health history, your medical history, and be able to work with you and support you side by side, people that you trust and know you personally. This is just for general information and educational purposes only. So use it as such. With that being said, now I will get into kind of the details about fiber and the different ways that it works for your body, especially when it comes to your hormones. So the first thing that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about, and I know in the title I said estrogen, but I'm going to talk about that as the second portion because I want to keep you listening. But the first thing I'm going to talk about then is blood sugar, because your blood sugar levels are also very important for your hormone levels and also involve other hormones as well. And fiber plays a vital role in having steady, healthy blood sugar levels. So having a steady blood sugar is part of maintaining homeostasis, and your body wants to maintain homeostasis as much as possible because it's trying to survive, right? So it wants everything to be steady, not get too low and not get too high. Just kind of maintain a nice even ground with the blood sugar. And obviously, there are times that your body is going to peak the blood sugar, and there's times that your body is going to have drops in the blood sugar. And something that fiber can do to help prevent this is that fiber slows down the absorption of sugar in your system, because it either can't be broken down because it's insoluble fiber, or it's soluble fiber, but it takes time to be broken down, and it slows down the rate of your digestion. So a really good example of this is that people often give is apple juice versus eating an apple. If you drink apple juice, your body is getting that instant blood sugar rush and peak, because there is nothing else for your body to be absorbing in the juice besides obviously the water. There's some vitamins. Both of those things aren't affecting your digestion that much. And then there's just the sugar. So the glucose, it's also known sugar, glucose, interchangeable there, go straight to your blood system and cause an instant spike, especially if doing so on an empty stomach. But what you're going to get with the apple is more nutrients. While the carbohydrates could be the same number or grams of carbs as in the apple is going to be absorbed slower because you also have the fiber at play, right? So it will take longer for your body to break down that apple. And so the amount of glucose that is going into your system at a given time, the rate is going to be slowed a lot, which is much healthier for your body to have a slower rate of absorption, and is going to help, like I said, to maintain those natural, happy, talking with my hands too much today. I'm sorry if you can hear that I just bumped the mic, but your natural, happy, medium level that your blood sugar wants to maintain as a normal blood sugar, right? So, some things that are negative if you don't have the fiber, or your blood sugar often has a lot of peaks and valleys and lots of spikes and falls, is that your body is then affected because it has to release different hormones. So the main hormone that we talk about when it comes to blood sugar is going to be your insulin. So insulin's job is to take the sugar that is in your blood and allow your cells to absorb it to be able to use as energy. There are times that exist where your body can naturally take up the sugar without having to use insulin. But for the most part, we rely on insulin to convert the sugar into energy in our cells for absorption. So if we have like 20, and these are just completely made up numbers for the sake of like understanding and education, but say your number is at like 120, and that's how much sugar is in your blood. And so your body wants to take up some of it so that you can bring your blood sugar down to a happier level. And so it's going to then, your insulin is going to take in some of that sugar. It's going to get used by your cells, which lowers the concentration in your blood, right? So then it might get down to like 85. And that's how it's really just the concentration of sugar that's in your blood, right? So yeah, insulin is used to help lower that. The whole point of that was that was the major hormone that we think of. But there are some other hormones that are needed for when your blood sugar gets too low. So the one that's going to be your fast acting instant hormone that is going to help increase your low blood sugar that's crashing is something called glucagon. And glucagon works for your liver to release glucose stores. So your body, of course, stores some of the sugar that you consume, some of the glucose, and for later use, because we can't use all of it in the moment when it's in our system, right? So it becomes stored energy. And then the glucagon tells your body to release some sugar in that moment to hurry up and get your blood sugar back to a normal, healthy level. But then the secondary hormone that is released in order to do this, because glucagon is a much faster acting, like instant result, and your body wants to make sure as long term as possible it's going to be able to survive and have a healthy blood sugar level. So it also releases cortisol to give a longer lasting effect on increasing your blood sugar. So we have heard cortisol many times that it is the stress hormone in our body, and stress greatly causes you to release cortisol. And this is one of the reasons why, because we want to maintain that healthy blood sugar and keep living. But the problem with that is then with cortisol being active for a longer period of time, 4, 5, 6 hours, then your body is still working to release that sugar that is stored in your protein sources. And so then you have an elevated blood sugar level for a prolonged time. And typically, most of us these days don't go that long of a period of time without eating. We have food available to us. So then your blood sugar is being elevated by your food as well. And so therefore, over time, long term, if this keeps happening, you can cause damage to your body because your blood sugar is elevated too frequently and too high. And that's kind of where the type 2 diabetes, like cortisol conversation comes into play, is just to do with your long-term glucose levels being high too regularly. And the cortisol is actually released by these two organs that are called the adrenals, and one of them sits on top of each kidney. And that's where your cortisol comes from. And when people talk about, there's a term that's pretty common recently called adrenal fatigue, and it comes from your body having to produce too much cortisol too often, and your adrenals then get tired and can't function as well. And so you need to make sure that you're supporting your adrenals. And adrenal fatigue and like insulin and all of that is kind of a deeper conversation I could get to at another day. But that's kind of how all of those things like tie into your hormones, and why it's so important. Going back to the first point, is that why you need fiber in your diet to help regulate your blood sugar levels, and why that's so important for your hormones, because all these hormones are at play when it comes to regulating blood sugar, which means they all also affect each other. Because if your body is in fight or flight mode too often with these elevated cortisol levels and the stress of having a major drop in your blood sugar, then it's not going to be able to release other hormones or focus its energy in other places, like like your estrogen, progesterone, other hormones that your body needs, and just other functions that your body needs outside of like your vital functions to survive and stay alive. So all of that is tied into making sure that you have healthy blood sugar levels and consuming fiber. And then the next part of the fiber conversation, like I said, is going to then be kind of revolving around estrogen. And something that fiber can do is that it attaches to the estrogen and helps your body to be able to excrete it better. So like I said, there's soluble fiber and there's insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber, your body can digest slowly and it kind of dissolves and broken down, right? Insoluble fiber, your body breaks down as much as it possibly can, but the fiber can never be fully broken down and used by your body, and it just becomes kind of like the bulk to your stool is one of the roles that it plays. And so what that does is to help your body to excrete excess estrogen, because if there's excess estrogen, it can bind to your stool and then you can excrete it. So that's one of the best ways that fiber can help with lowering your estrogen levels if you suffer with estrogen dominance. Another great thing about fiber in your stool and your intestines is that it can help to prevent intestinal reabsorption of the estrogen once it gets down to your intestines and your gut. So when estrogen reaches your gut, then it, beyond in your intestines, it has been typically like deactivated and it can't be used by your body anymore, but there is some bacteria that's in your intestines that can reactivate it and break it down so that you can use it again, and your intestinal wall will reabsorb those estrogens and recirculate them back into your system, right? But the fiber helps to prevent those bacteria from working on the estrogen, and then the reabsorption wouldn't happen because it's not getting, I can't think of the word at this moment, so I'm really sorry, but that process isn't happening for the estrogen to be altered to then be reusable by your body. So that is two major things that fiber kind of does for preventing or helping your body to get rid of the excess estrogen that's in your system. And then some other things that estrogen and fiber are involved in is to understand back to the previous conversation about your cholesterol levels and how they were finding that at different points in your menstrual cycle, your cholesterol levels could be different. Specifically following a peak in your estrogen, like the days following when that typically would happen, they found that cholesterol levels are lower. And so something to know about cholesterol is that cholesterol is a precursor to your estrogen production. Sorry. And so what that means is that cholesterol is needed in order for your body to make an active estrogen hormone. It is part of the structure for your body. And not only is it part of the structure of that hormone, but cholesterol exists in your adrenals, and your gonads they have what's called like a steroidal tissue, and that steroidal tissue is where a lot of your steroid hormones are developed. And so the cholesterol is in those tissues, not only because the tissues themselves need cholesterol for their own structure, their cell structure, and they also need them for their motility, but they also need them in order to develop the steroids themselves, or the steroid hormones, one of them being estrogen. And so why this matters when it comes to fiber is because fiber also helps to excrete excess cholesterol the same way that it helps to excrete excess estrogen. And therefore, if we have a good fiber-rich diet, then we're more likely to have regular like cholesterol levels that are not too high. And because your fiber is helping your body to excrete it. That's one of the best ways that you can lower your cholesterol is by consuming fiber. That's why you see on what is it, like Honey Nut Cheerios or Cheerios, they put the heart healthy and like cholesterol lowering, because the oats in Honey Nut Cheerios can help reduce your cholesterol through this process, the same process, by absorbing it and helping your body to excrete it through your stool. Like I said, the same way with estrogen. And so without having excess cholesterol, your body is less likely to be able to make as much estrogen because it needs the cholesterol to make the estrogen, which is why the fiber is important, because the fiber kind of gets in the way of that production by not having too much cholesterol, if that makes sense. So cholesterol is one of the ingredients. Sorry, I keep saying this. I just want to make sure it's clear. Like, cholesterol is one of the ingredients that makes estrogen, but fiber helps to reduce cholesterol, therefore reducing the amount of ingredients in your body to produce estrogen with, and therefore it can prevent excess estrogen production. Not entirely prevent, but help to prevent and slow down your estrogen production. But like I said, a lot more research is needed. The information that I had shared specifically regarding the cholesterol and how they were finding that levels were different at different phases of your cycle, depending on what your estrogen and progesterone hormones had been doing. I think that was from like 2020. So just in the last few years. And yeah, it's a really complex understanding. And it can be really difficult to pass along the information or to know for certain, because you don't want to just give information to people about like really new research that's maybe not like 100% confirmed or needs more data to support it. But what you should know is, out of all of this, is that regardless of the different mechanisms, even if you didn't understand them entirely, or maybe you didn't want to understand them and I made it way too complicated, is that fiber is important for your hormones, and it's definitely known that fiber can help with regulating regular, healthy estrogen levels, as well as blood sugar levels. And so all of these things are wrapped together as hormones, and they all have hormones involved, and therefore makes it part of women's health and makes it part of hormone health. And I'm a dietitian here to talk to you about hormone health. So let's talk about the nutrition aspect of where you can find fiber. And the great thing about fiber is it is present in so many, pretty much every plant source whole food that is available. So like I mentioned already, we talked about apples, we talked about oats. Those are great sources of fiber. You can see behind me, if you're watching, of my little studio here on YouTube, I've got bananas, grapes, carrots, lettuce. Those things are fiber. You've got beans, you've got lentils, you have legumes, you have nuts, wheat, barley. So many options when it comes to fiber-rich foods, right? So that's really great. And all of these foods I think are delicious, even if you disagree. I don't know. You just have to find the right cooking technique. I know not all food is for everyone. I personally try to like as many just like standard foods as possible. Standard foods to like what's available in the United States. Not a standard American diet though, because that's lacking a lot, but you know what I mean? Like the foods that are generally found in like a US grocery store. I try to like as many of them as I possibly can, but I'm not always successful because I hate olives. And I really want to like olives. I love olive juice, but I think I really like the brininess. I do not like the texture of an olive. But maybe one day I'm going to keep working on it. There's several foods that I used to not like and I like now. So I don't know. That's really not important to the conversation we are having. So yeah, there's lots of fiber-rich foods that you can consume that are great for you. We've talked before about like gut health, and if you're looking for consuming more prebiotics, I talked about this with the dietitian I did the gut health conversation about, and also when I kind of did my own conversation on gut health, and like I talked about, it's like prebiotic sodas. So if you're looking for increasing your prebiotics without using Olipop or Poppy sodas, they're just getting, you're going to find that in your prebiotics. Prebiotics are just a form of fiber, specifically beta glucans. So good sources of those are going to be like bananas and oats, like I already mentioned. I put a few more in the newsletter as well if you wanted to increase that. I think it was like asparagus, artichokes, alliums, I think, like garlic and onions and green onions, things like that. So those are all good for feeding the healthy bacteria in your gut. But they're also just pre and probiotics or prebiotics, which are all, again, just fiber. So yeah, those are great sources of fiber. I can never have the conversation about increasing your fiber, though, and the importance of it without reminding people to take it slowly and to make sure you also increase your water, especially if you're someone who already struggles with like constipation or being dehydrated and you're not regularly drinking water. That's already great advice for you. But if you try to increase your fiber, you could find some of those negative side effects much more likely to happen if you don't take it slow and you don't drink water. Negative side effects being discomfort, bloating, constipation, like I said. So just make sure you take it slow. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. And by take it slow, it depends on like where you are right now. Like if you don't really eat any fruits or vegetables, especially vegetables regularly, I'd say like start with 1 serving a day on the vegetable end. Or if you're wanting to incorporate more beans, they can be a little bit harder on people's digestive system. So I'd say maybe go for like 2 servings a week when you're first starting out, just to be sure that your body has time to digest and to become used to it. The more regularly, though, then you increase your bean intake or your fiber intake in your diet, I promise your body does adjust and you become used to it. But there might be a couple times of discomfort, and just know like that can be perfectly normal. But yeah, going slowly and drinking more water can really help with those things. Yeah, I think that's everything then about the fiber conversation. And I think I actually talked about everything that I talked about before, and actually maybe even more. So that's great. I'm really happy. We did not lose internet once, which means I was able to record this in one single clip, which is what I prefer. But anyways, I would just like to ask for those of you, whether you're watching or listening to this episode, if you could subscribe to my page and leave me a rating or a review. If you enjoyed today's episode or you like listening to the podcast, I would really appreciate it. That helps me a lot. And also, if you have a friend who you've been talking about this with, or you know struggles with fiber, or like wants to eat more vegetables in their diet, but maybe needs a push on education for why it's so important, or, has talked about estrogen or blood sugar levels or cortisol, all of these things are relevant in this episode. And so if you could share that with them, basically, is my point. That means the world to me. It helps to spread the information, it helps to educate more people, and it helps me as a podcaster to be able to reach more people, which I always appreciate. And I'm so honored if you find an episode shareable, worthy of sending to a friend or family member. So all of those things, really great. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here. And I hope that this episode has helped you to make better bites. Have a great week.